My name is Jasmine, and I'm 24 years old. I was standing in the middle of my parents' sleek Chicago condo, holding what was supposed to be my future. I'd just graduated top of my class from culinary school, my hands still calloused from endless practical exams, my apron permanently dusted with flour. My parents, Christina and Gregory, handed me a thick cream envelope with a tight, rehearsed smile. "This is from Grandma Beatrice," Mom said, her voice oddly flat, like she was reading a script she hadn't memorized. "A huge investment for your bakery." Inside was $400 in crisp $20 bills. I forced a grin, but it felt like swallowing glass. $400. For my graduation. For the dream I'd been building since I was 12. Meanwhile, my sister Shelby, 27 and currently between brands, was sitting on the couch unboxing a designer handbag worth $3,000 that she'd just bought with family funds. I tucked the envelope away, trying to ignore the familiar crushing ache of being the one who didn't matter. If you've ever felt like the invisible one in your own family, drop a comment and let me know your story. I'd love to know I'm not the only one. Chicago at 4 a.m. is a brutal place. The wind off the lake cuts through you like a knife, finding every gap in your coat. But inside the commercial kitchen where I worked, the heat was suffocating. The air was thick with the smell of yeast and burnt sugar, the ovens humming a low, constant roar. I was the first one in unlocking the heavy metal doors while the city was still asleep, while Shelby was likely still partying or sleeping off another networking event. My hands moved automatically, measuring flour, cracking eggs, kneading dough. It was muscle memory. I didn't have to think about the recipe, which was dangerous because it left my mind free to think about everything else. Like the $400 sitting in my drawer at home. Like the way Shelby had laughed when I mentioned I was saving for a stand mixer, telling me I should just manifest abundance like she did. Manifesting. That was Shelby's entire career plan. She was a lifestyle influencer with 12,000 followers and zero income, living in a condo. My parents paid for driving a car my parents leased, wearing clothes my parents bought. And me, I was the utility player. The one who fixed things. The one who worked double shifts. The one who didn't cost them anything. For years, I told myself this was fine. I told myself that my parents were just supporting Shelby because she needed more help, because she was fragile in a way I wasn't. I was the strong one. I was the resilient one. But standing there in the pre-dawn light, scraping dough off the counters, I felt something shift inside me. It wasn't patience anymore. It was exhaustion. I realized then that my silence wasn't a virtue. It was a chain. A heavy, invisible chain I had forged link by link every time I swallowed a complaint, every time I accepted a scrap of affection and called it a meal. I had convinced myself that endurance was love, that suffering in silence was how you earned your place in a family. But looking at the burns on my arms and feeling the ache in my back, I knew the truth. I wasn't earning anything. I was just making it easy for them to forget me. I was the invisible survivor. The one who kept the engine running while they took the car for a joyride. And for what? For $400 and a pat on the head, the timer on the oven beeped loud and shrill, snapping me back to the present. I pulled the tray out. The croissants were perfect, golden, flaky, precise. I was good at this. And for the first time, I wondered what I could build if I stopped using all my energy just to survive my own family. The shift ended at 2 p.m., leaving me coated in a fine layer of flour and smelling like vanilla and sweat. I took the train home, my body aching, my mind still churning with the realization I'd had in the dark of the morning. When I unlocked the door to the condo, I shared with my parents temporarily. I kept telling myself just until I saved enough for the bistro lease, the air was different. It was sharp. It smelled of expensive perfume and fear. My mother, Christina, was in the kitchen, frantically arranging a charcuterie board that probably cost more than my weekly paycheck. My father, Gregory, was pacing the living room, adjusting his tie in the mirror for the third time. Shelby was actually dressed before noon, wearing a silk blouse and looking annoyed, scrolling through her phone on the couch. "She's here," my mother hissed as I walked in. "Go change, Jasmine. You look like a baker." "I am a baker, Mom," I said, dropping my bag by the door. "Who's here?" "Grandma Beatrice," my father said, his voice tight. "She's in town for a board meeting and decided to stop by for dinner. We need everything to be perfect." My stomach did a slow roll. Grandma Beatrice didn't do stop-bys. She was a shark in a Chanel suit, a woman who ran her investment firm with an iron fist and viewed family gatherings as quarterly performance reviews. If she was here, she wanted something. Or she suspected something. I showered and changed into the only nice dress I owned that wasn't covered in flour stains. When I came back out, Grandma was already there, sitting in the armchair like a queen on her throne, sipping a glass of white wine. She looked exactly the same as always, impeccably groomed, silver hair, sharp eyes that missed nothing, and a posture that made everyone else in the room slouch by comparison. "Jasmine," she said, not smiling but nodding in acknowledgement. "You look tired." "I worked the early shift, Grandma," I said, kissing her cheek. She smelled of expensive soap and old money. "Good," she said. "Work builds character. Unlike some." Her eyes flicked to Shelby, who was currently trying to take a selfie with the cheese board without actually eating any of it. So Grandma said as we all sat down to dinner. The tension was palpable. My parents were practically vibrating with anxiety, laughing too loudly at Grandma's dry comments, constantly refilling her glass. They started bragging about Shelby immediately. It was their default setting: fill the silence with Shelby so no one looks too closely at the cracks in the foundation. "Shelby's brand is really taking off, Mother," my dad said, beaming. "She's collaborating with a new skincare line. Very exclusive." "Is she getting paid?" Grandma asked, cutting through the fluff. "It's an exposure deal," Mom interjected quickly. "But the potential is enormous. We're just helping her with some bridge funding until the contracts are signed." "Bridge funding," Grandma repeated, tasting the words like sour milk. "You've been building that bridge for 5 years, Gregory. At some point you have to ask if there's anything on the other side." The table went silent. I focused on my salad, trying to make myself invisible. This was the usual dynamic. Grandma attacked my parents, defended Shelby, and I tried not to get hit by the shrapnel. But then Grandma turned to me. The air in the room shifted instantly. It wasn't the dismissive glance I was used to. It was a focused, intense stare. "Jasmine," she said. "Enough about exposure. Let's talk about assets. Did the seed money help you secure the lease for your bistro?" I froze. My fork clattered onto the plate. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was terrifying. I looked at my parents. My mother's face had gone draining. White. My father was staring at his wine glass like he wished he could drown in it. Shelby looked confused, her thumb hovering over her phone screen. The seed money," I stammered. "The $40,000. Grandma said, her voice clear and loud in the quiet room. "I wired it last month. Specifically for your business. I assumed you'd have the keys by now." $40,000. The number rang in my ears like a gunshot. $40,000. I looked at my mother. She was shaking her head minutely, her eyes wide and pleading. A silent beg. "Don't say it. Please just play along. Don't ruin this." And for a second the old habit kicked in. The survivor's instinct. The chain I had forged. Protect them. Keep the peace. Take the hit. But then I thought about the $400. I thought about the pat on the back. I thought about the 4 a.m. wind and the burns on my arms, and the years of being the invisible utility player, and I realized I was done playing. "Grandma," I said, my voice shaking but loud enough to shatter the glass house we were living in, "I only got $400. The room didn't just go silent, it went dead. It was the kind of silence that happens after a car crash before the screaming starts. My mother made a small, choked sound like a balloon losing air. My father closed his eyes. Grandma Beatrice didn't move. She didn't blink. She just set her wine glass down on the table with a deliberate, terrifying click. She looked at me then, at my parents. Her expression wasn't angry. It was worse. It was clinical. $400, she repeated. I sent 40,000. There were overhead costs, my father blurted out, his voice cracking. Expenses. Family expenses. We were going to give her the rest, Mother, we needed to float some things first. Float things, Grandma said. Like what Shelby's handbags your country club dues, or did you invest it in something I should know about? It's complicated, my mother whispered, tears already welling up. You don't understand the pressure we're under. I understand math, Grandma said coldly. and the math says you stole $39,600 from your own daughter. She reached into her purse and pulled out a tablet. She tapped the screen a few times and then slid it across the polished wood table. It stopped right in front of my father. That is the digital receipt of the transfer, she said. Dated 30 days ago. Direct to your joint account, Gregory. Marked Jasmine's Bistro. It is a legal document. My father staring at the screen, his face gray. Mother, please. Where is the money? Grandma asked. Her voice wasn't loud, but it filled the room. Is it in the account? If I ask you to pull up your banking app right now, will I see $40,000? My father didn't move. He didn't have to. The answer was written in the slump of his shoulders, in the way my mother was now openly weeping into her napkin. It's gone, Grandma said. It wasn't a question. You spent $40,000 in 30 days. On what? We had debts, my mother sobbed. We were drowning, Beatrice. We just needed to clear some things up. Liar, Grandma said. She stood up, smoothing her skirt. I didn't just check the transfer, Christina. I hired a private investigator. The air left the room again. Shelby looked up from her phone, her eyes wide and frightened. A PI? You think I built a fortune by being naive? Grandma scoffed. I knew something was wrong when Jasmine didn't call to thank me. She was raised better than that. So I looked into it. She walked around the table, her heels clicking on the floor until she stood directly behind my father's chair. The money didn't go to debts. It didn't go to the country club. $25,000 of it was wired to the law firm of Sterling and Associates. She paused, letting the name hang in the air like a guillotine blade. That is a criminal defense firm, Gregory. Who is in trouble? My parents were silent, frozen in their chairs. Shelby was shaking now, her hands gripping the edge of the table until her knuckles were white. Fine, Grandma said, her voice deceptively light. I'll tell you what the investigator found. There was a police report filed 5 weeks ago. A hit and run on Lakeshore Drive. Property damage leaving the scene of an accident. The car involved was registered to you, Gregory. But you weren't driving it. She turned slowly to look at Shelby. Were you dear? Shelby burst into tears, ugly, loud, gasping sobs that destroyed her carefully curated image in seconds. It wasn't my fault, she wailed, her mascara running down her cheeks. The other car came out of nowhere. I panicked. I couldn't have a record. Grandma, my brand, I couldn't go to jail. So you let your parents pay for it, Grandma said, her voice dripping with disgust. You let them take your sister's future, her hard work, her dream, and use it to buy your freedom, to pay off the victims so they wouldn't press charges, to pay the lawyers to make it go away. She looked back at my parents, her eyes hard as flint. You sacrificed the child who does everything right to save the one who does everything wrong. We had to protect her, my mother screamed, finally finding her voice, though it was shrill and desperate. She's fragile. Jasmine is strong. Jasmine can handle it. Jasmine can wait. Shelby needed us. Jasmine is not a resource, Grandma roared, slamming her hand on the table. It was the first time she had raised her voice, and it made everyone jump, the silverware rattling against the china. She is not the fuel you burn to keep Shelby warm, you think, because she is quiet, because she is resilient, that she doesn't bleed. You think you can just take and take from her because she won't fight back? She looked at me then, and her eyes were soft for the first time, filled with a fierce, protective sorrow. You created a dynamic where the golden child gets the gold, and the black sheep gets sheared. You look at Shelby and you see yourselves, your vanity, your image, your desperate need to be special. So you protect her to protect your own egos. And you look at Jasmine and see only utility. Something to be used. Well, the shearing stops today. She turned back to my parents, her posture straightening into pure authority. I own this condo, Gregory. You live here because I allow it. She reached into her purse again. This time she pulled out a folded document. She tossed it onto the table next to the tablet. That is an eviction notice. 30 days. Get out. Mother, you can't, my father gasped, the color draining from his face until he looked like a ghost. We have nowhere to go. We used all our liquidity to pay the settlement. Then maybe you should ask your influencer daughter to support you, Grandma said icily. Since she's so successful. But you are not staying in my property. And I am liquidating your remaining assets, the car, the furniture, everything I paid for to repay Jasmine the money you stole. Every single cent. Shelby stood up, her face blotchy, and read her phone clutched in her hand like a weapon. "You're ruining my life," she shrieked. "I have a brand deal next week. I can't be homeless. This is Jasmine's fault. She's just jealous because I'm famous, and she's just a baker." "I am a baker who isn't going to jail," I said, my voice steady, surprising even myself. "And you're not famous, Shelby. You're unemployed." "I'm going live," Shelby screamed, holding her phone up, her thumb hovering over the screen. "I'm going to tell my followers everything. I'm going to tell them you're abusive. I'm going to cancel you." She hit the button on her screen. "Hey guys," she yelled into the camera, tears streaming down her face in a performance that was equal parts terrifying and pathetic. "I need help. My toxic family is kicking me out. My grandmother is a monster and my sister is a jealous witch who's trying to destroy me." She was pacing the room, frantic, filming us. "They're jealous of my success. They can't handle that I'm the star." Grandma watched her with a look of pure, unadulterated pity. "Shelby," she said calmly, "you might want to check your settings." "Shut up," Shelby yelled, spinning around to face her, the phone still recording, the little red light blinking. "You don't know anything. I didn't mean to hit that car. I was drunk, okay, but Mom and Dad fixed it. They paid the money. You can't punish me for something that's already fixed." The room went silent again. Shelby froze. She looked at her phone screen. The comments were scrolling by so fast they were a blur. Wait, did she just say she was drunk? Driving? Hit? And run? Oh my God. She just confessed. Screen recording this. Jail. Shelby stared at the screen, the color draining from her face as the realization of what she had done crashed over her. She tried to end the stream, fumbling with the buttons, but her hands were shaking too hard. The phone slipped from her fingers and clattered onto the floor, screen up, still broadcasting her ruin to 12,000 people. I watched them, my parents sobbing on the couch, realizing their safety net was gone. Shelby staring at her phone like it was a bomb that had just detonated. And I realized something profound. Their power over me was never real. It was an illusion purchased with stolen money and maintained by my silence. Without the funds to prop them up, without my compliance to enable them, they were nothing. Just empty shells collapsing under the weight of their own lies. I looked at them and felt not anger but a deep, cold sense of release. They weren't giants. They were just people who had spent everything they had to look rich. And now, the bill was due. 1 year later, the morning air in Chicago was crisp, but inside Beatrice & Company, it smelled like heaven. Freshly baked brioche, roasted coffee beans, and the sweet, sharp scent of lemon zest. I stood behind the counter of my own bistro, wiping down the gleaming espresso machine. The line out the door wrapped around the block. Grandma Beatrice stood by the entrance holding a pair of giant ceremonial scissors, looking smug in a new Street John suit. "I told you," she said, watching the customers file in. "Location is everything." "And the pastries," I reminded her, handing her a fresh croissant warm from the oven. "The pastries help," she conceded, taking a bite and closing her eyes for a second. "But mostly, it's the management." We didn't talk much about my parents anymore. We knew where they were. They were living in a cramped, one-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of the city, buried in legal fees. The investigation into Shelby's hit and run had been reopened after her live stream went viral. She was currently serving probation and doing community service, her brand permanently destroyed. My parents had tried to reach out a few times, sending letters asking for reconciliation, which I knew was code for money. I burned them without opening them. I didn't need their apology. I didn't need their explanation. I had realized that closure wasn't something they could give me. It was something I gave myself the day I walked out of that condo and never looked back. I looked around my bistro. It was warm, it was busy, and it was mine. Every tile, every spoon, every recipe was a testament to the fact that I was more than just a resource. I was a creator. I walked over to the window and flipped the sign from closed to open. The sun hit the glass, and for a moment I caught my own reflection. I looked tired, yes, but I didn't look heavy anymore. The invisible chain was gone. And the view from here was beautiful.